So the new Crow movie has been met with widespread criticism and a familiar refrain that it can never recapture the magic of the original. But this reaction strikes me as strange because honestly, the original Crow was never as great as many remember it to be. While the 1994 film is often celebrated as a cult classic, revered for its gothic atmosphere, stylish visuals, and the tragic story behind its creation, beneath the layers of nostalgia and cultural significance lies a film that, upon closer inspection, may not be as flawless as many remember. So in this video, I'll argue that while The Crow is an influential and beloved movie, it may not be as great as its reputation suggests. So before we proceed, if you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Let's get back. One of the most commonly praised aspects of The Crow is its distinctive visual style. The film's dark, gritty and gothic aesthetic, heavily influenced by noir and the comic book art, sets it apart from films of its time. The use of shadows, rain-soaked streets, and a muted color palette creates a world that feels appropriately bleak and haunted, perfectly aligning with the film's themes of revenge and loss. However, while the visual style is undeniably striking, it often feels like it's doing the heavy lifting in the film. The movie's narrative, which revolves around a man returning from the dead to avenge his and his fiance's murder, is relatively straightforward and lacks depth. When you strip away the film's moody atmosphere and examine its core story elements, it becomes apparent that the plot is a simple revenge tale. While there's nothing inherently wrong with that, the film does little to elevate the narrative beyond its basic premise. The stylish direction, while captivating, sometimes masks the film's weakness in storytelling, leading to a sense that the movie is more about aesthetic than substance. When we compare The Crow to the James O'Barr's original comic, it becomes clear that the film adaptation made several changes that may have weakened the story. The comic is darker and more introspective, with a greater focus on the themes of grief and the psychological torment of the protagonist. While the film maintains these themes to some extent, it shifts focus towards action and visual spectacle. This change may have broadened the film's appeal, but it also diluted the depth found in the original work. The comic's exploration of Eric's pain and his connection to the afterlife is nuanced, providing a richer emotional experience, whereas the film's adaptation feels more straightforward and less willing to delve into the complexities of its protagonist's inner world. This brings us to another area where The Crow falters, its pacing and story structure. The film's pacing is uneven, with some scenes feeling rushed while others drag on longer than necessary. This inconsistency detracts from the overall experience, making the film feel disjointed at times. For instance, the first act of the movie sets up the premise and introduces us to Eric's tragic backstory. However, once Eric begins his quest for vengeance, the film falls into a predictable pattern, moving from one confrontation to the next with little variation or development in between. While the action scenes are well executed, the repetitive nature of the plot makes the film feel monotonous as it progresses. The lack of narrative complexity means that the film's structure becomes apparent early on, leaving little room for surprises or deeper emotional engagement. Even the film's character development is lacking when we look beyond Brandon Lee's iconic portrayal of Eric. Lee brings a sense of vulnerability and intensity to the role that resonates with audiences, but the other characters in the film feel underdeveloped and one-dimensional. The villains, in particular, portrayed as stereotypical criminals with little depth or nuance, existing primarily as obstacles for Eric to overcome, rather than fully realized characters with their own motivation and complexities. This lack of character development diminishes the impact of Eric's quest for vengeance, as the audience is given little reason to care about the individuals he confronts. Moreover, the supporting characters who are meant to provide emotional grounding for the story, such as Sarah, the young girl Eric and his fiancée cared for, and Sergeant Albrecht, are given limited screen time and development. While their relationships with Eric are touching, they are not explored in sufficient depth to add significant emotional weight to the narrative. The dialogue in The Crow is another aspect that can be hit or miss. While there are moments of poetic beauty, particularly in Eric's musings on love and loss, the writing often veers into melodrama. Some lines feel overly theatrical or dated, which can pull the viewer out of the immersive world the film is trying to create. For example, while lines like this,
"I wish the rain would stop just once,"
Can't rain all the time,
have become iconic, others, particularly in the interactions between the villains, come across as cliched or lacking in subtlety. This inconsistency in the quality of the writing highlights the film's struggle to balance its darker, more introspective moments with the demands of an action-driven revenge plot. And of course, the tragic circumstances surrounding the film, particularly the accidental death of Brandon Lee during production, have undeniably contributed to its legacy. Lee's death cast a shadow over the film, turning it into a symbol of unrealized potential and adding a layer of poignancy to the viewing experience. This real-life tragedy has led many to view the film through a lens of reverence, which can make it difficult to critique the movie on its own merits. While it's understandable that Lee's death has impacted how the film is perceived, it's important to separate the art from the artist's fate when evaluating the film's quality. The emotional weight of the tragedy has in some ways amplified the film's reputation, leading to an overestimation of its artistic merits. It's worth asking whether The Crow would be held in such high regard if not for the circumstances surrounding its production. In conclusion, the legacy of The Crow is undeniable, and the film has left a significant mark on popular culture, and it continues to be cherished by fans around the world. However, when we move past the nostalgia and emotional attachment to the film, we find that it may not be as great as it is often remembered. The reliance on visual style, uneven pacing, thin character development, and occasionally melodramatic writing all contribute to a film that, while influential, is not without its flaws. By revisiting The Crow with a critical eye, we can appreciate its strengths while also acknowledging that its reputation may be somewhat inflated by the tragic circumstances surrounding its creation. So before we dismiss the new film entirely for not living up to the legacy of the first, maybe it's worth reevaluating just how strong that legacy really is. Perhaps the problem isn't that the new Crow fails to capture the original's magic, but that we've been holding on to a romanticized version of the film that, while influential, was never as perfect as we've come to believe. That's just my opinion anyways.